Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and over the next hour, we're going to talk a lot about the NFL draft, and we got a great one for you. Just one guest tonight. Mike Detillier will join us in just a few minutes of Mike Detillier's Draft Report, and we'll give you the opportunity to call in and to pick Mike's brain on what's going to be happening in the upcoming NFL draft, especially for your New Orleans Saints. You can always join the conversation at 504-866-3200. And, of course, Mike's been doing it for a long time in terms of his draft book, and we'll tell you a little bit about that as we go forward as well tonight. Before we get to Mike Detillier, of course, there's some news and notes that have been happening over the last week or so since we last met here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Of course, Jonathan Goodwin, we've been talking about him a lot on this program, probably going back to just after the Saints season ended, and when we realized that, again, San Francisco was moving on, and they would not be re-signing Jonathan Goodwin. Well, Jonathan Goodwin made a stop in this week to meet with the New Orleans Saints officials. And like a lot of us in the media have been speculating for a while, looks like Jonathan Goodwin is at least on the radar of the New Orleans Saints brass and may be a nice stopgap guy for the center position. As you know, Brian De La Puente has signed with the Chicago Bears. He is going to be signed as a backup. That's the interesting thing about, again, he will be a backup in Chicago. The Saints obviously feeling that the center position needed an upgrade, especially when you look at the possibility of maybe being more of a running offense this year. Although, as I've said many times before, I don't buy into this, that all of a sudden the Saints are going to be a ground and pound offense. I still think they're going to be a passing offense. And one of the things that we really saw with Brian De La Puente at the center position was Drew Brees just not having that open lane, that pocket ladder that he could climb, that if you go back in your mind's eye of the years gone by, especially with Jonathan Goodwin at the center position, you saw the fact that, again, that Brees really had an opportunity to really kind of get up climb that pocket ladder unscathed. We didn't see that a lot with De La Puente, kind of an undersized center, but even at 300 pounds, just not really big enough to be able to move some of the bigger defensive tackles in the NFL. Jonathan Goodwin could be a great stopgap measure for this team, could be a guy that could come in and actually start for the team. And you got to figure at this point in free agency, since he has not had a lot of visits, hasn't had a lot of takers, that he's probably going to come in at a very reasonable price for this team. Saints are now $3.3 million under the cap. Again, just a magical work by Mickey Loomis to be able to make sure that this team continues to get under the cap. That came after Broderick Bunkley took a pay cut last week. So now the Saints at least have some maneuverability to be able to sign their free agents, depending on what's going to happen with Jimmy Graham down the line, to be able to have some more money there. Although I do believe Jimmy Graham's contract, once it's signed, will be more cap friendly and will even free up even more money than the $7 million they have allotted for him already. But it's going to be an interesting scenario going forward for the New Orleans Saints at that center position because of Tim Lelito. Tim Lelito looks like he's the heir apparent to that position, a guy that played 2 regular season games at the guard position for the Saints, struggled in his first game, played very well in his second game. But, the center position is a total different animal than the guard position. And I'm interested to see ultimately what's going to happen with Tim Lelito. I've said before, and I'll continue to reiterate that. I've done it on my radio show and on this show. I think it is really something that the Saints have to look at going forward to be able to make sure that Tim Lelito gets some time gets some time at the center position. So I fully expect him to be the center for the OTAs, for the offseason workouts, and maybe in a minicamp with maybe an eye on Jonathan Goodwin being that backup guy or that stopgap guy going forward. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Mike Detillier is going to join us on the program. As I mentioned before, you're always welcome with your phone calls at 866-3200. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. And we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Reg?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state, blue state, vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live.
our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Cox Channel 14, Charter Channel 11 and 711, AT&T Channel 32 and 1032, Dish TV, DirecTV, and over-the-air broadcast on Channel 32.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're gonna be hanging out a little bit more.
Hi, we're Ola High, and you're watching WLAE TV.
In the search for beautiful people, music that moves, and real culture, America, there's only one LA Coast. Go Coast, Louisiana delivers the treasures of the Gulf, fresh to you.
I think we need a bigger boat.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on LAE.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE TV, with a rebroadcast on Friday nights, 10 o'clock on WLAE TV, and also on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. Make sure you mark your calendar, 6 o'clock every Thursday. And joining us on tonight's program, just one guest. He can do, I tell you what, looking forward to this. I have been looking forward to it for a while. Mike Detillier of Mike Detillier's Draft Report, also WWL Radio. And Mike, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, Eric. It was aggressive driving that got me here.
Well, for those of you that don't know, it is a virtual parking lot in New Orleans right now. We've got multiple accidents on multiple access roads, I-10, the Causeway, and Mike, you did a great job of maneuvering.
You got me here, thank goodness.
Well, Mike, before we get started, I was checking out your website today. Boy, I tell you what, you're involved in so much. Tell the folks where folks can read your writings, where they can catch you on the radio, and of course, a little bit about how they can get your draft book as well.
Well, I guess everybody this time of year, they worry about more the draft book
Yes.
than anything else, and so we'll be having it out in the next couple of days. We got them in, mailing them all out, and so that's a big relief on my part and for everybody who's ordered it. So it's they can go on to saintsreport.com, also MikeDetillier.com, and get that information, and just about click me in on every radio station. I've done, a lot of TV and radio, so I've been fortunate to do it. But no, draft's a big issue. And now I'm caught up also doing, a lot in the high school to the college on the recruiting part of it. So that's pretty big too. But really my niche is the NFL draft, and it's that time of year.
How many years now, Mike? How many years?
27 years from me.
27 years.
It just seems like yesterday, so to speak. But yeah, it's passed pretty quick.
Yes, it has, and really a great publication. I would recommend it to anybody out there, especially if you enjoy the NFL draft. Mike, before we get into the draft, it's been a while since you've been here. Your thoughts on how the Saints have done in this offseason?
Well, with a team that was kind of strapped for cash, I thought they did a really good job. Getting Jarvis Byrd, I think, was certainly the big acquisition, because now you have a ball hawk in the secondary. And last year, listen, this team really came together because of that defense. The young defensive line with Akeem Hicks, with Cameron Jordan, John Jenkins, Junior Gillette, that all came together real well. What you didn't get was turnovers. And I think this is the acquisition of Byrd will give you that. 12 interceptions the last 3 years. Roman Harper and Malcolm Jenkins combined in 3 years for 6. So, I mean, come on. I mean, right then and there, you got your ball hawk. Champ Bailey, you just hope can stay healthy. I've told this story to so many people that I remember we in Platteville, and Buddy Diliberto and I, we got an interview with Joe Montana. He had just been traded off the air, not on, but off. His comment was, I'm a better player today than I was when I was 25, 28, 30. I don't know if I can hold up physically.
Right.
And I think with Champ, that's the big question mark. You're getting the 36-year-old Champ Bailey.
Yes.
I think what you hope is he can be your nickel guy. And when I've done the numbers, the sub packages, 68% of the time you're playing 3 cornerbacks or more, that he could hold up at that level. He's had a foot injury. But again, Father Time's ringing the bell. How many 36-year-old corners are out there?
Sure.
Now, listen, if he can start for 16 games, he can rip that shirt open. He got the red S under it. He's Superman. At this level to do it, unbelievable. But I like the acquisition because, again, ball hawk, if he can stay healthy. So I like what they've done to help the defense. We know that Tim Lolito is eventually going to be the starter at that center position. Bringing in Zach Strief back, I thought was underrated, but what a huge acquisition that was. Listen, starting right tackles, difficult to find in this league, and when they ran the ball last year effectively, it was to the right.
Yes, it was.
Jari and Zach. So right now, you know what your needs are.
Mike, I read one of your columns recently. You talked about Champ Bailey. The Saints have said that they want to utilize him as the starting corner. He believes he's going to be the starting corner. But as you just mentioned, you kind of see him as maybe the nickelback in the sub packages. As you mentioned, 68% of the time, those sub packages are on the field. Is that the natural spot for him now, do you think?
I think at his age, yes. I think you would want that. I mean, a lot of people projecting him at safety. Man, where at?
Yeah.
I mean, they got enough safeties on this football team today. But that third corner is a big part of today's football because you know what? You got to match up against my 3 receiver. And all I know from covering the college game into the pros for all these years, the big difference today is my 3 receiver is a lot better than your 3 cornerback. So you better have a guy that can match up. And I think Champ, if he's healthy, can do that. Now it's to find another starter.
Yes.
And you got a host of guys there, but a lot of question marks. Patrick Robinson, Corey White. That's why I think this team goes corner fairly early. And I wouldn't be surprised somewhere down the line if a veteran corner was available for him to bring him in. You never have enough.
Well, $3.3 million under the cap right now. Mickey's done a masterful job of being able to maneuver that cap. So they've got some cap room to be able to go out there and get that last tier of free agents after June 1st, those guys that have not hooked up with the team, who are maybe looking for an opportunity to win a championship. The Saints are definitely in a mix of those small handful of teams that are alluring to those type of players.
Yeah, nothing's fair in life. But that's not fair in the NFL. Even if the money is different, if I'm going up against a team like the Raiders and they're offering maybe a couple $100,000 more, and you can play with the Saints and Drew Brees and that defense today, I'm coming to New Orleans.
Yes.
I get a chance to possibly play for a Super Bowl. Eric, I'm going to tell you this now. 2014 is the Saints' best shot to get back to Super Bowl Sunday that they've had since 2009. When you look at how good this defense is, this defensive team is much better than the one that won the Super Bowl. And offensively, Drew Brees will never be better than what he is in 2014. You've hit an age where that's not going to happen. Right. Listen, Brett Favre caught lightning in a bottle late in his 30s to do it. Warren Moon did it. But there aren't a lot of guys that are going to be able to do that. I think right now the stars are aligned. And when that schedule is going to come out next week and you're going to see, I think – listen, the Saints won't say it, but I'll say it. Easiest schedule in the Sean Payton time frame since 2006, and the tough teams in the Dome. You got to come and play in their house. Yes. So I think this is the best opportunity to grab the #1 seed and have a shot to get back to Super Bowl Sunday. If it's not done in 14, you may not get another shot at that. Because I think for the Saints, it's all chips in.
Yeah.
It's poker game, all chips in to win it in 2014.
You can see it already with what they've been able to do. They go out, get Bird, $54 million contract, second biggest contract in the history of the organization, taking a flyer on Champ Bailey. They have done what they need to do to be able to make sure they can take best player available coming up in this draft.
Right.
Really
I agree with you.
You know, I mean, so they've set the table for this as well. You know, I'm often mused at things that are said on this show, but you mentioned it. You were the first to mention it, and this was way back as the season ended, and you came off after the season, and you said, watch Tim Lelito and watch that he may be the heir apparent at the center position. The Saints had Jonathan Goodwin in yesterday. He may be that stopgap guy. He may be that guy, that veteran backup. But you're the first to talk about Tim Lelito. What did you see in him, and what leads you to believe that he may be the starting center? In a training camp period, what I saw was a big guy who could move his feet pretty well, very athletic. He was playing guard. And I saw him certainly in college, and I knew he needed to physically get stronger, but he was technically a really, really interesting player. He caught my eye along with Glenn Foster. I mean, a couple of days of training camp, I mean, you saw that those guys could play and play pretty well. But he is a guy that I think they're looking at to be that starting center, a bigger player than Brian De La Puente, a little bit quicker off the snap. And Goodwin would be brought in as the bridge the gap guy. The insurance policy, in case something goes wrong with Tim, he gets hurt, maybe doesn't play as well, you could plug in the guy that you know pretty much what he can do at that center position. So it makes a lot of sense. And for Jonathan, man, again, I want to hitch my wagon to a team that can go to the big show. So you know what? At 35 years old, I'm not going to have a lot of options unless there's an injury. This is my best opportunity, if I'm Goodwin, maybe to start again. Yes. Look who I'm going up against. A guy who's never started one game in the NFL and never really played the center position. He's really been a guard. Now, Tim did start one preseason game at the center position, but that's a lot different than a regular season game. And again, when you look at where the Saints are right now, he would be a perfect fit because he's played in this system already. There's no learning curve now for Jonathan Goodwin, and you may be able to get that last bit out of him while there's a transition to Lelito. And again, look, to me, I think it's a nice mix. We've been talking about Goodwin for a long time here in the media, here in New Orleans, and I think he'd be a nice fit, at least to be able to see what's going to happen. And Mike, we're going to talk about it a little later, but I still believe that they may go center in the draft. You know, I think that's going to be one of their positions of need. One thing with centers is if you're expecting that guy to start for you, now listen, I know the Pouncey brothers did it. Yes. Alex Mack did it. It's one of the hardest positions when you draft to say that guy can start for you at center. Who was one of the best centers this football team had a few years back? It was LaCharles Bentley. He was a guard first year. Then he got moved over to center position. I mean, Brad Edelman was a guard, moved to center. Steve Court, guard, center. So it has transitions there. You taking a little bit of a roll of dice, so to speak, to have a rookie center. It's not the physical part of it, it's the mental. 5 guys working as one, you making the calls. So I could see them taking a center guard in the draft, starts out at guard, and then he challenges Lelito somewhere down the line. 504-866-3200 if you have a question or comment for Mike Detillier, our guest tonight. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We found out through Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton with the LSU Pro Day last week that they don't feel like that they're in any type of hurry to be able to sign Jimmy Graham. This quote-unquote grievance hearing that was supposed to happen on the 22nd of April is not an impending date for them to get something done. They still feel pretty comfortable that they're going to get a deal done, long-term deal with him, but they don't feel any rush to get it done. What's your take on that, Mike? Well, I think it gets probably done in July, like the Drew Brees contract got done. I mean, you know, we talked about it almost a month and a half back, same sort of scenario of events. But Jimmy's a big part of the puzzle here, you know, because he is your number one option at wide receiver, because basically that's what he's playing most of the time. So it's important that you get him in, at least once training camp starts, you get him in. The thing that would really help Jimmy Graham more than anything, speed wide receiver, a guy that what I always refer to it as the nuclear threat, because you know what? Because I have it, you got to respect me that I have it. Last year, no Devery Henderson, no Joe Morgan. I'll draw that safety down in the box. I have no fear of over the top. But if I got a guy that can run
And I think he's a big play guy. I got to play my safeties back. It helps the running game, and it gets coverages off of Jimmy Graham.
Yes.
So it's kind of like the nuclear bomb. I got it. You got to respect that I have it. Because not that I'm going to use it, but I do have it. And every once in a while, I'll throw it on you. And I think we've seen that in the past with Drew Brees, him kind of lulling teams to sleep, and then he hits it big with Devery downfield. When Devery retired, he was one of the active leaders, I think one of the top 3 in yards per catch.
Yes.
Because of that. And I think you need to bring in that guy. Listen, I think everybody loved to have Odell Beckham.
Right.
He's not going to be there at 27. You're going to have to trade up to get him. He's going to be somewhere off the board from 15 to 22. Got a chance to talk to him recently, and I told him, you're not going to sleep long Thursday night. I mean, you're going to be a top 20 pick. So I think 5 receivers go in the top 25. It's only happened twice in the 2000s. I think come May 9th, it'll happen the 3rd time.
Is this the deepest draft of wide receivers that you've seen in recent past?
Deepest draft I've ever done in 27 years, and the receiving core is as depth-filled as I've ever done, where I think you can get some quality guys in the middle rounds. Teams, no matter what, they're going to try to fill needs. That's what the draft's all about. So you can maybe pass on one in round 1 and get a good football player in the 2nd or 3rd round at wide receiver.
It's interesting, Mike. Earlier, as the season ended, before the combine, a lot of draft experts had Odell Beckham going 25 to 32. You real early in the process, were on him early. We sat here. You told me he would be maybe a top 15. Would not even get out of the 20s. And it looks as though looks like he's going to be maybe a top 15 pick. And that's why I tell folks when we talk about it on my radio show, you have to give up so much from 27 to get to 15 that, to the thought of maybe trying to jump a couple teams to get Odell Beckham, even though I think he would be a great panacea for this team.
I think he'd be a great fit.
Perfect fit. I think you would probably have to give up too much to get him. Your thoughts?
I agree. The thing is, you have a 2-tier option here. Are you patient at 27 and keep the pick? In this draft, everybody would love to trade back. And I think the Saints would like to do that. But I think probably about 6 teams in the late 20s would like to do it also. You got to find a dance partner. If you stay at 27, that's going to be a defensive player fall to you. 5 receivers, Eric Ebron at tight end, the quarterback's coming off the board, offensive line. All of a sudden, there's going to be a defensive back or a linebacker that falls to you at 27. You might say linebacker's not a need position. Junior Gillette and Victor Butler's contract is coming due after this season. You're paying David Hawthorne a lot of money. So when you add all that up, linebacker may well be a position, not immediately, but somewhere in the works real quick.
Some linebackers that may fall to this team that you think may be there at 27.
Ryan Shazor, the outside linebacker from Ohio State, and the guy that I really think could tumble, C.J. Mosley from Alabama. Inside linebacker was also played on the edge. Very instinctive. What I like about him, Eric, is you don't have to take him off the field on 3rd down. He's a real good cover guy. So watch what happens to Ryan Shazer and C.J. Mosley come draft day. Now, they could get picked ahead of that, but that would also mean something's got to fall.
Something's dropping to you, right.
So do you stay there, or does a team get antsy a little bit when they see those quarterbacks still available, and you deal back to 34 or 35, one of those teams who passed on Manziel or Bortles in round 1 and try to get their guy late in round 1 feeling somebody might be trying to do that to us?
Mike, what's amazing about this draft, and I've talked about it before, teams seem to reach on quarterbacks really too much. Guys that again, are not NFL caliber or not NFL starting caliber. You see it each and every year in the draft. They'll take a flyer on him early in the draft. They'll get him in maybe the top 10, top 15 pick. They don't pan out. Within 2 years, they're dumping them. They're trying to move on to the next quarterback. We have seen this a lot lately with again, teams just trying to reach for that signal caller, a guy that may have done it in college but don't transition well to the pros. Why do you think teams continue to go after that quarterback when, again, let's face it, when you look at the grade on some of these guys in a very good quarterback draft, some of these guys would be 2nd and 3rd round picks?
Yeah, it didn't happen last year, though. Didn't happen last year. Only one quarterback. E.J. Manuel went, and then Geno went in the 2nd round. And then you saw Barkley and Ryan Nassab fall into the 4th round of the draft. So it wasn't the case, but you know what? I don't know that you can pigeonhole everything all based off of one draft. Listen, Johnny Manziel ain't dropping to the 2nd round. Neither is Blake Bortles. Right. Derek Carr is going to be a hot prospect in the 20s. If anybody takes a little bit of a tumble, it's where a lot of people had Teddy Bridgewater and thought maybe he'd be the top overall pick in the draft. I think he's the guy that may take the tumble. It's what you think of the other guys. You know those 4 guys will be the 1, 2, 3, 4 in the top 35. What happens to Jimmy Garoppolo from Eastern Illinois? What happens to Zach Mettenberger now that he's healthy? He gets into the mix now as a 2nd-round pick. And for the Saints, my thing is more quarterbacks off the board, the better. Because that pulls a player toward me that can help me now.
Lineman, defensive back, wide receiver, those guys tend to tumble if you're getting a run on quarterbacks.
Yeah, and you know, you and I have done this a long time. I've told you this. The one area, as it gets closer and closer, that ekes up the draft board quicker than anyone, big linemen.
Yes.
They don't last long, big offensive linemen and pass rushers, because they just aren't there.
Right.
It's the sea change you see from the junior high school to the high school level to college. What LSU did a year ago was unbelievable to have all those prospects. You're not going to ever see that at LSU again, to have all those top prospects defensive line-wise. Because if I've got a 6'3" to 6'5" guy in high school, man, I want him catching passes at wide receiver, tight end. He ain't rushing the quarterback. And I think in college football today, you see 4 wide receiver sets all across the board and the big wideouts.
Yes.
Mike Evans is of the world to play at that position. So, Eric, all I'm telling you is it has become an offensive world, and it is changing the sea level of what you're seeing at the college level, and it'll affect the NFL dramatically over the next 5 years.
504-866-3200 is the phone number. Mike Detillier is our guest. My name is Eric Asher. I'm your host. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We're going to take a quick break. We'll go right to the phone lines when we come back. Stay tuned, New Orleans. Each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE TV at 6 o'clock is Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll be right back.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is literally saving kids' lives.
It's a very special place, friendly place.
To see the kids that they're helping on a daily basis was unbelievable.
Families never receive a bill from St. Jude.
Discoveries made at St. Jude are freely shared.
The hardest cancer cases in the world go to St. Jude. We won't stop until no child dies from cancer.
Join us.
Join us
in supporting Hoops for St. Jude.
Visit stjude.org/hoops to find out how.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, along with Mike Detillier of Mike Detillier Draft Report. You can go to MikeDetillier.com
and
SaintsReport.com to find out more information. Let's head to the phone lines. 866-3200 is the number to call. DJ is in New Orleans East. DJ, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, Eric, Mike.
DJ.
Mike kind of stole my thunder with
sorry, DJ. I'm sorry.
Yeah, hey,
brother.
man. He kind of stole my thunder with the Saints maybe going, I guess passing out of the first round. The question I had was, if Houston doesn't take a quarterback, do you think Jacksonville will take a quarterback? And if not, would they be the prime one to move back in the first round?
Yeah.
And I'll hang up and listen.
DJ, that's a really good question, and I think it's highly likely both teams are going to pass on quarterbacks. Right now, Jadeveon Clowney, when I finished up the draft book, he is the highest-ranked defensive end I've done since year one, Bruce Smith.
Wow.
He's a difference maker. I don't see how the Texans can. Now, listen, there's a lot of pressure on them to pick Manziel.
Yes.
No question about it. A lot of pressure because if I'm Bob McNair, friend, foe, family member to my dying breath, if Johnny Manziel ends up being a great quarterback, you are going to hear about it. And they're going to have it on my tombstone that I'm the one who passed up on him. I do think you bring up a good point. That really helps two guys. Jimmy Garoppolo from Eastern Illinois, Zach Mettenberger, because Jacksonville and the owner has said we want to take two quarterbacks. So that tells me that I think that they will go defense. If you look at their head coach, defensive oriented. If Khalil Mack is still on the board at 3, I think he's the guy they go with at that 3 spot. Matter of fact, Khalil Mack is my highest ranked outside linebacker since Derek Thomas, God bless his soul, came out of University of Alabama. So he ranks
small Buffalo, right? Buffalo concept.
Yeah, I got to talk to him. He said, when I came, he was a Florida kid, came out of the Florida high school ranks. He said, I had 1 scholarship offer, Buffalo. It goes to show you sometimes guys mature late in life physically, and that's what happened to Mack. But I really think what DJ brought up is a great point. That really helps Zach Mettenberger and Jimmy Garoppolo tremendously. Or if they fall in love with Derek Carr and he's still up on the board at 27, it may be the maneuver to get him.
Right. Also, it could help the New Orleans Saints. If the Saints are looking to trade back, depending on if there's not a player there that they consider one of their top players on the board, when you look at teams that may be looking at a Mettenberger, maybe there may be a situation where, or one of those other quarterbacks where they want to trade back into that first round. Houston, some of those other teams, that's a possibility.
No question. I think those 2 teams would be target teams to move up into the into the kind of latter part of late round 1. One team to watch with Zach, if he kind of lingers around a little bit, Cincinnati. All I'm telling you is they have put a lot of shovels in the dirt about Zach. Not real sure about, can Andy Dalton get them over the hump?
They're questioning that in Cincinnati right now.
Questioning that in Cincinnati. And the other thing, too, is what happens if Arizona passes on a quarterback in round 1? You look at that offense, man, if I'm Zach Mettenberger, my thing is tag me. I want to go play there. If I can throw the football to Michael Floyd and Larry Fitzgerald and have that defense back me up, it'd be almost like back at LSU.
504-866-3200. Bob is in Kenner. Bob, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Bob.
I would like to know your opinion with regards to a place kicker. Do you think in the lower rounds we might be looking at a place kicker? And also, do you think Hartley has an opportunity to come back and play with someone?
Thank you, Bob.
There's no question Garrett Hartley can kick in the NFL, and he'll get that opportunity again. I do think the Saints take a look at that late in the draft or priority free agent. I'm on the phone with those kickers real late. It's not an area where you see people getting a lot of picks from. So round 7 may be a spot where you see a kicker there you might want to bring in. If not, and Cairo Santos from Tulane's not picked, my thing is, man, you've kicked here before. You come right on here and be part of the competition because it's open.
Right. Is that one of the kickers you really like? If you had your druthers late in the draft, who are some of the kickers that may be in your bullpen?
Well, the kicker from Rice in Texas, those 2 guys are really, really good. And certainly Cairo having kicked in that dome.
Yes.
Also, too, you got a former Saints coach maybe whispering in your ear that, hey, listen, Cairo made some big kicks for us here.
Mike, offensive line, when you look at where the Saints are right now, Zach Strief, his last contract, getting up in age. You got a situation where Teron Armstead looks like he's going to be your left tackle, but again, the jury's still out on him. There's a transition right now, as we spoke about at the center position. You got a lot of money locked up in 2 guards that are aging right now. When you look at the offensive line, I've said that it wouldn't surprise me if ultimately, through undrafted free agency and the draft, if they hit all positions, center, guard, and tackle, what's your take, and what are some guys that you think the Saints may be looking at?
I think one of the things you have to look at is that this football team has really hit gold in the middle rounds of the draft. If it's been Jari Evans, if it's been Carl Nix, Jamon Bushrod, man, even Teron Armstead, I mean, he was a 3rd-round pick, so you got to consider that as a middle-round selection. I think they kind of duplicate that. And, a lot of times it's a little bit gruffy that, our MO is not to pick offensive linemen early. Well, the explanation on that is where you picking. Because you've been a very successful teams, those top offensive guards and tackles aren't on the board when you're picking in the 20s, not tackles, because most of those guys are off.
Yes.
You look at where they picked last year, which was in the middle of the draft, and 6 linemen were gone, Eric. You'd have wanted to tackle then. You just wasn't there. You wasn't going to get any value picking that. So I think they go back to what's worked for them. And in the middle rounds, they have done very well, and I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't use 2 picks in the middle rounds one on a center guard and the other one on a tackle.
Right. They got that extra pick, obviously, in the Darren Sproles trade, another 5, which again kind of sets that up as well. As you look at the mock draft boards, your draft boards, as you kind of have been talking to NFL general managers, the wide receiver position, we already talked about being the deepest in the draft. Who do you think are the best fits for this team? I'm talking about the Saints going forward. Obviously, Odell Beckham looked like he's out of reach, but some other players that may be there in the first round or maybe subsequently in the second or third round that the Saints may look at.
Yeah, because, again, you're talking about a little bit of a cut here once you get past those top 5 guys. And I'm talking about Sammy Watkins from Clemson, Mike Evans from Texas A&M, Odell certainly, Brandon Cooks from Oregon State. That was my original guy, but you're not going to touch him at 27 now. And Marquise Lee from USC. And he would be a top 20 pick. There's a little bit of a question mark about health with him because he has been nicked up. The 6th guy is Kelvin Benjamin, who's a totally different receiver. And when you talk to coaches at Florida State, he's never been the hardest working guy there. And he kind of blew off an NFL coach about workouts and everything else. And listen, this is a job interview. You got to do what you got to do. So that brings you to another tier of receivers now, where you have Devontae Adams from Fresno State, Jarvis Landry from LSU, Jordan Matthews from Vanderbilt, and a guy I really like, and if he's there in round 2, I would pick him, Dante Moncrief from Ole Miss.
What do you like about him?
One, he's got size. Sean Payton likes a receiver with good size, speed. He can beat you deep, but he's really good in the short, medium areas of the field. I know one thing, if you're an LSU fan, you never want to see Dante Moncrief back on the field again because for back-to-back years, he's torched them. And so he's a guy in another draft would have went maybe much earlier, but in this draft class could fall back a little bit because I do think there'll be a run on cornerbacks in the early to mid part of round 2. You got a lot of teams there looking to shore up the cornerback position. I think you may see a run there where the receivers come off the board in the top 25, then all of a sudden you see the cornerbacks from late in round 1 into the middle part of the second round, a ton of corners. That's going to force a wide receiver to be popped back to you.
Jarvis Landry, talk about him. I love him. I think a lot of people that again, are here from Louisiana love his toughness. He's going to be a great special teams player just coming out the box. Where do you think he goes, and what type of fit do you think he would be for the Saints?
Well, he'd be a great fit. He's not the nuclear threat. He's the guy that on 3rd and 6, he gets you 8 yards. I know a little bit about him. My cousin Tim coached him at Lutcher. And so I got a pretty good beat on him. Just the best hands I've ever seen come out of LSU. Great route runner, tough, and he'll go over the middle. He's Antoine Bolden all over again. He's a guy that plays a lot bigger than what he is, and you bring up a great point. Special teams, he brings that element to you. But all I know is when you needed a catch, he made it. And I look at LSU's football team. You might talk about what's going to happen at quarterback, what's going to happen at certain positions. The biggest hole to fill is who's going to make that 3rd down catch for you.
Right.
You might say, well, Trayvon Durrell, he's got speed. Well, he takes Odell's spot. Is he going to go over the middle and make that catch? Or you're going to find out just how good Jarvis Landry was. I think he's an early to mid second round pick.
Early to mid?
Early to mid second rounder. And somebody's going to say, man, I want that guy because I have the threat on the edge. I want the guy that can move the chains for me. What Bolden has done for so many years with 3 different teams.
Yeah, and again, I agree with you. I love his toughness as well. Just a tough player. Back to the phone lines we go. 504-866-3200. Let's go to Harris in Slidell. Harris, welcome. You're an Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hi, Eric. I'm enjoying the show.
Thank you, Harris.
My question to Mike is the Saints have done a tremendous job of finding pretty good players from small schools. I was wondering who Mike thought that they may be targeting from a small school.
Thank you, Harris. We appreciate it. One of the guys that they brought in this week, in fact, I had a little short conversation with him when he got back, was Pierre Desur.
Hearing a lot about him
from
now.
Lindenwood. I know a little bit about him. My daughter went to journalism school in Missouri, and so Lindenwood and Columbia, that's not that far away. So, he's a guy that, again, like Khalil Mack, matured a little bit later physically in life. He's a big, tall cover cornerback, long-armed. When he played against better competition in the kind of bowl season, he stepped up. He's got good speed, and he's one of a group of guys along with Keith McGill from Utah, Stanley Jean-Baptiste from Nebraska, who was originally a wide receiver, now corner, and certainly Pierre, that 3 big corners. Everybody's going to try to duplicate what Seattle did. And so, and you know what Rob Ryan likes. He wants a big cover cornerback. So, man, Pierre's a guy that if he's there in round 2 and you've maybe picked either a linebacker or a wide receiver in one, he certainly would be somebody to have a lot of interest in. Unfortunately, when I did my draft, he was gone. So you look at those small cover college cornerbacks, and you're right. Every year there's a couple of 3 of those guys, and even McGill, he was a safety, a junior college guy, 1 year at cornerback.
Yes.
Baptiste, wide receiver, now a cornerback. I think a lot of coaches like that maybe they haven't picked up some bad habits at that corner position, and they get to mold a really good young football player.
Speaking of corners, the Saints brought in corners and safeties this week to the facility to kind of work those guys out. Mike, we know it's a need. Some guys outside of Pierre that may be on the Saints' radar, first, second, third round that could fit with this team.
Okay, in round 1, one of the guys they did bring in is Bradley Roby from Ohio State. Very inconsistent player at Ohio State. Some game tapes you flip it on, he looks terrific. Other game tapes, he's spun around like a top. So that's the one thing I don't like about a player. Inconsistent play from week to week, but he's awfully talented, tremendously talented. Jason Verrett from TCU, and I think he's a favorite of a lot of people. Yes. Tough little guy, not real big, but man, he's like a gnat at a picnic. I mean, he just keeps swatting away. He's a ball hawk. I think he's a late first-round pick guy. And certainly you look at that edge where that guy could be available when you pick. I just so happen to think somebody will fall in love with Roby's athleticism and pick him ahead. And it could well be Cincinnati, who has a huge need at that cornerback position. Marcus Roberson, a big cover cornerback, a bump and run guy. Didn't run well for the clock, but I've seen him play at Florida quite a number of times. He's a guy that, if he's healthy and focused, is a really, really good football player. So those are some of the guys in the early part, or latter part of round 1, early part of round 2. We talked about Desur and Baptiste and McGill that could be available for the Saints. A lot of times you bringing in guys, you want to, there's a split opinion. Yes. Maybe the coaches feel one way, scouting department feels a little bit different. So you want to kind of bridge that gap, bring that guy in, and maybe it's a one-on-one thing.
You know, the only thing I don't like about Ohio State players, Roby, Shazer, in the past we've seen this, they graduate late. A lot of times they don't get to camp. You know, they get a little bit behind the curve because obviously you can't come to camp until your class graduates. So it kind of retards their progress early. They catch up, but again, that's the only thing I don't like about Ohio State players. They don't seem to get into camp on time because they got to wait till their class graduates.
Yeah, I agree with you, but you know what? They put a man on the moon. So you know what? You can come in and miss a few practices and come back and play.
Yeah. Mike, when you look at the guys at the corner position right now, because let's just say the Saints are pretty much set at safety. We've heard Calvin Pryor, but my gosh, they've done a lot at the safety position. Which one of those guys that maybe you could get at 27 have the ability to come in and play right away? This is a make it or break it year for Patrick Robinson. We don't know what you have in Corey White right now, and you've already said you think Champ Bailey is going to be the nickel corner for this team. Who can come in and start it right away? That's going to be in this draft that may be available at 27.
I think Verrett or Fuller from Virginia Tech. One of those two guys, or either one, I think is going to go to any NFL team and kind of say, you know what, I'm going to play. And for this football team, they would have a really good shot to come in to start as a first-round pick type guy. Again, Verrett doesn't maybe fit the MO in that he's not a big guy. Fuller's a little different. He's built a little bit differently. He's a taller cover cornerback. So I think those are the guys that you're looking at as late first-round picks. But again, watch what happens at linebacker. And the other wild card would be Coney Ealy from Missouri, who's played some defensive end, kind of a little stand-up here and there. He's a guy that you can move around the chessboard a little bit. He could get caught a little bit in the crossfire of offensive players and get pushed down. I don't think Dee Ford's going to be there from Auburn. I just think he reminds me so much of Bruce Irvin in that you fall in love with the athleticism, the potential as a pass rusher. He comes off the board before 27. You'll have a lot of options, but I think there's going to be one guy that you had ranked in the teens and you say, man, he's there at 27. You may have a trade option to trade back, but there's going to be a guy there that you say, there's no way. And you know what? We talked about this years ago. I had Cam Jordan as, I think, the 16th best player in that draft class, and look where he fell to the Saints.
Yes.
It was a run on defensive linemen,
right.
And that was unprecedented year for defensive linemen. Unprecedented, all the guys that came out. And yet you were able to get him with value, and he's ended up being maybe your best defensive player.
Oh, well, I don't think there's any doubt. And again, I think the Saints have set themselves up now that they can take best player available. They don't have to reach. The only real position they have not filled is wide receiver at this point. But as you've mentioned, there's so much depth at the wide receiver position in this draft. You can take a guy in the second, third, fourth round that might be able to come in and make an impact for you. So they really have set themselves up well. That Bush-Sproles clone, that's been a big part of this offense for a long time. The ability to dictate a movement on that safety, that linebacker, to respect that outside speed. Odell Beckham would be a great guy, even though he's not a guy that's coming out of the backfield. I read today that LaMichael James is on the trading block with San Francisco. He had that type of speed coming out of Oregon. Who do you think in this draft fits that bill, and do you think the Saints will go in that direction at some point?
That's an interesting question because Coach Payton has said Tredaris Cadet's going to be that guy.
Do you buy that?
Well, he can do the same things Darren can. He just can't do them as well.
Right.
He's not as physically.
Doesn't have the speed?
He doesn't have the speed or the quickness of Sproles. But I'll be honest with you, there ain't a lot of guys that do that. In this draft class, if you use an early pick on a running back / kind of wide receiver return man, Dre Archer from Kent State.
I really like him.
Now, he's a track guy.
Yes.
And he's had a little bit of downtime because, I think all those track guys kind of do it. A later round pick would be DeAnthony Thomas from Oregon, who can kind of do the exact same thing, didn't have that big season like you thought he would. It was kind of spread the wealth at Oregon. And if you're looking at a free agent guy, a guy right up the road from us, Jeff Scott from Ole Miss. A little small, running back, 5'7.5", a lot of speed, can catch the football, has worked as a return man. There's a lot of options there. All the thing I know, if I'm Coach Payton and I'm Mickey Loomis, my scouting department has found me Chris Ivory, Cadet, Pierre Thomas, Kyrie Robinson as all undrafted free agents. Hey, boys, find me one more. And he's a niche guy.
Yes.
He's a niche guy.
Where do you think Archer goes? I've seen some drafts where they got him in the third, fourth round, some as low as the fifth round. Where do you think?
Third round for me.
Third round.
I think that speed's gonna, somebody's gonna say, wow, he brings that factor. When he's been healthy, he has been that type guy that he's one step fast, Eric. I mean, he can take off and he can help you in so many areas. He's a mismatch downfield also as a receiver. How are you going to match up with a guy that type speed? Same thing with Thomas. His inconsistency maybe as a junior has some teams maybe questioning a little bit, and he's a guy also that would fit very well in this offense, So Archer, Thomas, Jeff Scott.
What about James? He sat on the bench at San Francisco. What are your thoughts on him? Does he bring anything to the table? Is he a guy that maybe the Saints do a look-see on? San Francisco tried to trade him last year, got no takers. He's back on the block again this year.
My thing is, why are you trying to get rid of him? You used a second-round pick on him.
I don't know.
So why are you wanting to get rid of him if he's that good of a player? And he's in his rookie contract. So he's not costing you a lot of money. That tells me that Jim Harbaugh does not think he can hold up at the NFL level, size-wise. He's actually telling you that without telling you. I'm taking a late-round pick for a second-round pick.
And that's what it would be, probably a late-round pick.
At best.
No, I would agree. Back to the phone lines we go, 504-866-3200. Mike Detillier is our guest. Chris, Uptown, welcome to the program.
Hi, how you doing?
All right, Chris.
Okay, my question is, do you think the Saints going to win the next Super Bowl?
Could you repeat that, Chris? I'm sorry, you broke up on us.
Okay, I'm sorry. Do you think the Saints going to win the next Super Bowl?
Oh, okay, Chris. Thank you for the phone call.
Chris, I've said it before. I think 2014 is the best chance for them to get back because, one, I think your offense isn't as good as the 09 offense. I mean, I don't think there's a debate about that, but your defense is much better. You have still one of the elite players in this game in Drew Brees at his prime, along with Jimmy Graham hitting that area of his life where you will get the best football out of him. I think you got your best chance now than any other time to make it back and wait till the schedule comes out and see the home and away.
Yes.
And I think you look at all those tough teams, most of them are in New Orleans,
yes.
You're playing here, and I think it's going to be a nice ride if you can keep everybody healthy. And that wasn't the case last year.
I agree.
It really wasn't.
That's I think that's one of the keys. But, Mike, I agree with you. Finally, you have a defense that needs to be reckoned with in the NFL. And even though you have an aging quarterback, he still has something in the tank. And you've just got to tweak that offense a bit. I mean, maybe get a little younger, especially at the skill positions. But, again, I believe that this is the year that they got a real shot to go all the way.
I think you become a little bit more physical team offensively because I think you found out you can run the football pretty well late. And I think you found your back, too. I think you found the guy in Kyrie Robinson that can carry the load. And the other part that's missing, though, is the speed element. That ability to scare you and get that safety out of the box and respect me. So if you have that.
Is Joe Morgan that guy?
I think Joe can be a part of that. And I tell you what, last year, right off the bat, first couple of days of training camp, Cam Jordan stood out. That was no question. Everybody said, well, he was in better shape. Well, Cam's always in really good shape. It wasn't the shape that got to me. It was his ability to use his arms and hands so much better, almost like an MMA fighter. And I tell a lot of the young defensive linemen coming out, look, if you're going to train, one of the things to do, work with your hands, almost like an MMA fighter. His leverage skills, his ability to come off of a block, so much cleaner than it was the 2 years earlier. That's what I saw, why I thought he was a jump out guy. The other one was Joe, much more confident, running routes, knowing what he could do, knowing the plays. Because in this offense, if Drew Brees doesn't trust you, you're not getting the football.
He's not even looking your way. Let's talk about some prospects that are coming out of LSU, and then I want to get to some other Louisiana prospects that could be drafted. Again, we saw a lot of players from LSU drafted last year, and we've got quite a bit that are on draft boards right now. Talk about some highlights to me, some players that will go in the draft in this upcoming year.
Well, we've already talked about Odell and Jarvis and Zach. Jeremy Hill is an interesting player.
Where do you think he goes?
I think he's a third-round pick. I think similar to Tyrann Mathieu, I've seen a lot of people write it and say it that, it's irrelevant, his off-the-field issues. Well, it ain't irrelevant. I mean, you got to slide that folder to somebody and say, this is the guy we picking. He has not gotten any trouble. And if you took everything off the board, which you can't, because life's unfair, but he put himself in this position. If you took everything off the board, he would be the top running back in this draft, but he's not because of the off-the-field issues. I think like Tyrann Mathieu, he's an early to mid third-round pick, and he's a heavy-duty back, and he can catch the football. He's a stud back. There's no question about it. I think the guy that has made the real big move up has been Trey Turner. And he's a very athletic guy. The last time I did the show, I had him ranked as a late fourth, early fifth. He won't get out of the top 100 picks. He'll be a third-round pick.
Third-round pick.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he has really, really helped himself out. And I've heard some teams talk about even giving him a shot at center. Now, he's a big athletic guy. He was LSU's best run blocker 2 years ago. I thought he was their most consistent pass blocker a year ago. So, he's a top 100 pick. You look at him as a pure guard, but now some teams are looking at, if we got a hole at center, maybe give him a little bit of work as in 1 year and then move him over to the center spot the next. Anthony Johnson, Ego Ferguson, the two totally different type players. Ego's the big power guy in the middle, stuff to run, had more tackles at the defensive tackle position than any other LSU defensive tackle since Glenn Dorsey. When you think about all the guys that have churned out, and he has got the most tackles, but he's a guy, not going to give you a great pass rush, but he's a guy that can stop the run, tie up multiple blockers, give you a little bit of a push up the middle. Anthony Johnson's the home run hitter. Either he hits the home run or he strikes out. And you see it. He tries to go for the big play way too often, and he stays wired to blocks too long. He's got to learn how to use his hands a little bit better, but it's supply and demand. I think both these guys are off the board middle of the third, or very, very early part of the fourth.
What about some Louisiana products that are out there that didn't go to LSU that will get drafted in this upcoming draft?
Well, you know, I think about it because I went to high school with his dad, Greg Robinson, from Auburn. He went to Thibodeau High School, and I first started covering Greg, and he was a defensive lineman, track athlete, throw the shot, put, and discus. And, you know, he could go as early as the second overall pick. Eric, he will be the highest drafted lineman from the state of Louisiana ever.
Ever.
Now, people say, what about Willie Roaf? Well, Willie Roaf's not a Louisiana guy. He went in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Right.
But even if you threw Willie in the mix, he's going to get picked before Willie.
Willie was a 10th pick,
he
right?
He was actually 7th or 8th.
7th, 8th, okay.
Yeah, he's in that range.
He's in the top 10, right.
But I think Greg Robinson's off the board before then. Unbelievable story with him. Had a tough background, but, man, he's overcome it. I like Justin Ellis a lot from Louisiana Tech. Didn't get a lot of recognition. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Kyle Williams coming out of LSU. You look at that body, he's 6 foot, 300-something pounds. He's a really good athlete, can run the field extremely well. LaDainian Washington, who went to Missouri, big, tall, lanky receiver. More of as a middle-round pick, but boy, I like those tall receivers, especially in the red zone. He really lit it up last year.
How about Ryan Grant? What do you think about him?
I think he's a late 4th, early 5th round pick. Really good route runner. You know, he reminds me a little bit of coming out of college is Greg Jennings, in that real crafty, knows how to set you up, can make the catch. Really good, short, medium range areas of the field. But if you don't respect him, he can beat you deep.
Anybody else on Tulane's team that may be looked at?
I think Santos certainly as a late round pick, priority free agent. Chris Davenport's going to be in a camp. I mean, he's a big body guy in the middle.
Right.
Now, he has not put up great numbers, but I think he certainly goes into camp. He reminds me a little bit of Al Woods, doesn't he?
Yes.
You know, big man, never found the niche, but I think he gets an opportunity because he is a big man who can stop the run.
Can't teach size. Mike, how can folks get a copy of your draft report?
They can go on to saintsreport.com, also MikeDetillier.com.
Sounds good. Mike, as always.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Really appreciate it. And thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this show each and every Friday night at 10 o'clock on WLAE TV and Pelican Sports Television. You can also catch me on the radio weekdays on 990 AM WGSO, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. And you can also catch any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports and also my radio show at ericasher.com. Special thanks to our guest, Mike Detillier. Make sure you check out his draft report. Also to the WLAE production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, my producer, director, William Hill. I want to wish everybody a happy Easter and have a great night. We're going to take you live and direct now to the St. Louis Cathedral for the Holy Thursday Mass with the Archbishop. Have a great evening, New Orleans, and thanks for watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natels Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.